What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my three great co-hosts, Fede Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hannah. And guys, here we are, a new month. It is officially the 1st of March at the time of recording. Hump Day, of course, for some people that do celebrate that. But obviously, we do have to talk about what's been going on in obviously our local league. Obviously, a big game happening this weekend between two powerhouses. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll talk about what's been going on in the Copa Libertadores for two Paraguayan sides, how one side definitely will feel a bit more happier than the other side, given the fact that both of them are in the neighborhood. So one half of the neighborhood is happy. The other one, I don't think so. We'll be discussing that. We'll also be talking about what happened in the EFL Cup final featuring our very own Miguel Almiron for Newcastle against Manchester United, and much more that's been going on. Now, let's go to someone who apparently is feeling very lucky. I don't know if Fede was doing this on purpose because it's the first day of March. Maybe he's already in the mood that he wants to go and party out on St. Patrick's Day already, although I don't know how big it is in over there in Paraguay. But let's see if some teams are feeling lucky this month with big games happening on, Fede. So how are you, man? And happy first day of March.
Hi, Roberto. We're starting this third month. I did not think about that when I was putting this shirt on, a green shirt that says feeling lucky. It is March. St. Patrick's Day is coming. I know it's a huge holiday in the States. Obviously, it's like an Irish tradition, right, Ralph? But it's scattered all over the world. It's not that big here. Maybe people that like to drink beer and stuff like that go out and have an excuse to do it on that day, especially. But no, I was not thinking about that when I put this shirt on. But hey, we all need our luck, right? So at least one of the two teams that's competing in the Libertadores had that luck. I'm talking about Cerro Porteño. They pretty much didn't need much luck because the rival was not that much of a threat for them. I'm talking about Curicó in both matches, but for Nacional, I mean, talk about their luck running totally out, especially on those last minutes. What a game that was. We definitely got to talk about what happened in Libertadores this week. As for the local league, another change of manager. I was seeing that General Caballero let go of theirs. Humberto Velar, after losing, had to quit his job. Troadio Duarte, the former Guareña manager, now takes over. This is his second gig, his second job as a head coach in First Division. We'll see how he does. And this is, I believe, the third change already, right, that we've had in just 5 weeks of games in the Apertura. Trinidense, the big surprise, I would say, so far after 5 games. Obviously, Libertad at top and making the gap even bigger because Olimpia and Cerro Porteño couldn't win this past weekend. That's how they go now to this to face each other in the Superclasico that's coming up. Probably not in their top shape, especially Olimpia, because they haven't been able to win after 2 games. So we definitely got to do this preview about the Superclasico. And then there was some weird show-ups of the bar this weekend. Some interesting calls that we should probably also talk about. Alan Pereira was fighting for the ball against Beto Espinola in the game against Cerro Porteño, and he was called off for using his finger the wrong way. If you guys want to look at a weird video on the internet. And then there was also in General Caballero's game a player sent off for taunting somebody in the stands. Apparently somebody was shouting at a player, Tobias Castellano, and he looked at the stands and called somebody fat. And the bar picked that image up. Bar does not let anything go, and they had to send him off. So Bar had his job this weekend. They had to do their work. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, Roberto. Not just football, but even these kind of bloopers also that are part of our Paraguayan football.
Never cease to be boring over there in Paraguay. There's always something that's going on.
You've seen everything here.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and then here's the crazy part. It's like it could get much weirder, and maybe we'll probably see that this year. I mean, Ralph, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I didn't want to go into this discussion, but I definitely wanted to mention it because I'm sure you've seen it, when you've been to Paraguay so many times. You think as if though you've seen it all. You've seen, I don't know, like dog invasions on the pitch, floodlight failures and just, issues of like, violence and all that kind of stuff. But now seeing these kind of incidents with VAR and just kind of like other like like a bunch of misfits going on, it's like, what more do you want? Like, how much can Paraguayan football offer to you, at least for the common people over there?
The gift that keeps giving, because we're not even talking about, there's a great story from the 50s when a guy downed an airplane with a football, which is a great story we'll talk about one day. But he got so annoyed about an airplane flying over his games, he just kicked the ball really high and made the airplane fall down. So I mean, this is nothing new. This has been going on forever in Paraguay. And I mean, I was really surprised with the second VAR decision that Fede mentions, because the first one has a precedent, which was Jara and Cavani, and it's unsportsmanlike conduct. We're talking about Alan Pereira's wayward finger. But the second one, the taunting the crowd, if you think usually a player, if they score a goal and then they go to the wrong section of the crowd and they taunt them, they usually get a yellow card. So it was interesting to see like a straight red for this. It was a game anyway that Trinidense were dominating. Trinidense looked really good. And that's a really good game coming up this weekend. But all our focus is going to be on the Clásico because it's the biggest game. But don't forget, Libertad, the leaders, are playing Trinidense, who are second. And that could actually be a really exciting game. Trinidense might be the team to try and stop Libertad. So they're playing really well as well. But that incident was, just another kind of series of strange things we'll see. And it's definitely not going to stop there. I'm sure we've got much more coming this way, and especially with the Clásico, and Jean Fernandez is probably back for Cerro in goal. And remember, he got sent off one time before the game even started for taunting the crowd. So you never know what could happen.
No, you can't. You cannot never know. And going into bragging rights and go to Maria on this one, because obviously, like Ralph had said, yes, obviously there is a big clash between right now, first and second, Libertad and Trinidense. That's going to be played on the weekend, the last game of the weekend. But of course, with the Superclasico, it's going to be played at the Manuel Ferreira at Para Uno. You would think a raucous crowd is going to be there. And, Olimpia don't typically lose at home. I mean, especially in Superclásicos like this. So, this, and we'll get to the game later on, but yeah, I mean, given the fact that both the teams aren't looking so hot in the way of not like dominating the first positions, like I said, Cerro right now in third with 9 points, Olimpia in fifth with 7, a win for both these teams is absolutely necessary, and it could change their season like that if they're able to get victory on the weekend.
Yeah, that's true, Roberto. Hey guys. It's definitely one of the Clásicos that they're mostly alike, and there's not a lot of difference in between them right now. They both need a win. They both have been playing more or less. None of them are on the top of the table, so it's kind of like a game of luck in this, just like Fede's shirt. So it'll be a really exciting game, I think, because you don't know which one is doing well. We'll talk about what each team needs and what they need to improve on. But I think that definitely maybe in this case, Olimpia could have some kind of the good side of the card, because they're going to be playing at home, so that's kind of like a good thing for them. But they've had all this crazy stuff going on for them as well, so we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be an exciting game nonetheless. Superclásicos are always fun to watch, and like you guys said, you never know what could happen in any of these games. Maybe we'll have another crazy, strange occurrence this time around as well. We'll see. We'll definitely be watching it.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's like some sort of, I don't know, like an invasion of dogs. You always see the one dog going on the pitch. Maybe we just get a bunch of dogs and like everyone's trying to stop and delays the game for like 20 minutes. That's on my card right now, if I had to pick a random bet of like what crazy thing could happen. But we'll get to the Superclásico later. Let's talk about what happened in the Libertadores, because obviously we saw two teams from Paraguay obviously battling out in the qualifying stages, the second stage of the Libertadores. The first one that we'll definitely mention is the one that ended up being the luckier team, and that's Cerro Porteño. Cerro Porteño obviously coming off the 1-0 win over Curiolino Unido over there in Chile, a late goal from Juan Patiño in the first leg. Going into the second leg, however, it was a bit of a more tighter game. You saw Cerro Porteño waste a bunch of chances early on. Unido was very, very close to scoring as well, but it took a goal from someone that I think is rightly starting to find his form this season after, missing out a majority of last season in Robert Morales, La Pantera. Morales getting the goal in the 51st minute. We did see a missed penalty from Diego Churin as well in this game. So, Fede, going to you on this one, I think it's really much a performance that, it was expected. I mean, certainly the score line perhaps demonstrates that maybe it wasn't the most convincing performance given the quality that both the teams have and the kind of the gap between them. So one would feel like, it's a good result. Obviously, the fact that now they're in the next stage, they're going to wait the winner of, at the time of recording, either Fortaleza or of Brazil or Deportivo Maldonado of Uruguay. I think Fortaleza is the favorite to qualify. So maybe you would see another Brazilian team taking on a Paraguayan team in Cerro Porteño, but I think a lot has to be made on this side, and there still has to be a lot of improvement for that game, because I just, from what I've saw from these last two games, even with a new manager like Facundo Salva, who maybe still tries to implement his idea, maybe it's just not convincing a lot of the fans, the pundits, people who watch them. And one would think, how much more time do we have to give a manager like Facundo Salva?
Well, let's remember, right, when they changed from Chiqui Arce to Facundo Salva, this team hadn't lost yet. So they were getting the results, but they weren't looking 100%. I mean, this team is still far from reaching its best level. That's what I think as of right now. You can see that individually the players can do so much more in the pitch. They can contribute to much more, and this team just needs to keep on building. But you're seeing something from Facundo Salva, which is repeating the team. I mean, he put the same 11 against Curicó that he put in Santiago just a week ago. So clearly he's looking at this team and he's seeing himself reflected on what he's seeing on the pitch. He's happy, apparently. If now you're going to change it up around, even if you win. So he's getting the response, even though you won just by a goal in Santiago. You couldn't score all the chances that you had. I think we said that on the last episode, and it was pretty much the same match again that I saw last night. I was at the stadium, and the atmosphere was there. Yes, obviously at Cerro Porteño, the minutes were going, the minutes were passing, and you seen that the team couldn't score. That Morales was missing his chances. That Churin wasn't getting the ball inside the box. That you were seeing that Claudio Aquino, Pachi Carrizo, they weren't having a great game. They weren't making the best passes. Cerro Porteño fans was starting to get worried until that VAR decision, until that penalty. And then it was Diego Churin's big shot. It was his opportunity to put fans again by his side, even though he is one of the favorites of the fans. He's had trouble with the penalties before, especially in Superclasicos. Fans don't forget that very easily. And I did not like the way he shot that ball. He did not look like a specialist, and I thought it was going to be Claudio Aquino. He had the ball with him the whole time. I think it was just a strategy. We're seeing that a lot lately in football. A player get the ball, go to the penalty point, and just wait there, absorb all the pressure the opponents get to him, and then Diego Churin takes over and he puts the ball on the bar. And that was just, and it was heartbreaking for him, and especially because you want to see him come and show up in this big stage, just like Robert Morales is doing pretty much in every game. I think he's taking it upon him to have a special Libertadores this time around. He couldn't play it last year, and this is the best tournament for the players. This is the tournament they're waiting for to make a name for themselves also. And I think Robert Morales is probably one of the best players that this team has, and he's doing just great. Just starting the year like he wasn't injured. I mean, I'm seeing the same Robert Morales I saw before the injury, and the fans love him. They love to see him score. and he's making it happen. He's getting his opportunities, and he's the only one that's really hot for the strikers right now in Cerro Porteño, because then you have Brian Zamudio again, Marcelo Moreno Martins coming in the game, and oh my God, Ralph, Maria, I cannot believe what my eyes saw. Marcelo Moreno Martins having 2-3 opportunities that were just so clear. Cerro Porteño should have won by 2-3 goals. I just can't believe that they only won 1-0. They had so many opportunities. It could have been just pure confidence before the Superclasico, and it was just a 1-0 match after all.
Yeah, it's like you're saying, Fede, that they're still winning games, but there's just something hasn't clicked. There's something's not quite there, but they're getting close because we're talking about how many chances they're missing. So they're creating the chances, which is good. But notice, again, we talked about this last year, they're creating the chances when one of Aquino or Carrizo isn't on the pitch. When they're together, they're still not as good. And so that he has to figure that out, Sava, because that was something Chiqui Arce never figured out. Sava's doing it at the moment, but it's not working either. And then, yeah, he has the problem of misfiring goal scorers, especially Marcelo Martins, but he's got Morales. Morales is such a key player. Remember, Morales actually finished, if I'm right in thinking, he finished top scorer for Cerro last year, despite the fact he was injured in March. I mean, think about that. 9 months out and he was still their top scorer. And he's, assuming no more injuries, he's going to be top scorer again, or assuming he doesn't leave in June, because he's that good, he might end up moving, right? I mean, I'm sure a lot of clubs are interested in him. They were interested in him until the injury, but he's doing really good because he has great movement in the box, and he's very he's mobile, right? So he can be all around the pitch. And then alongside him, you're going to have Chorin, or you might have Martins or Ferfer, and those guys don't move around as much. So he complements it really well if you're going to play with 2 strikers, which is what Sava looks to do. So from that side, things are good. The other person that I think is performing really well is Beto Espinola. Beto Espinola puts in the cross for the goal, and he's been very strong. On left back, Cerro are they're having some difficulties, I think, because I mean Brock couldn't play in the Libertadores. He played in the local league, and Baez was a left back. Baez was centre back last night. He seems to be a more of a stronger option, let's say a stronger defensive option than Rivas, who Rivas played last night at left back, who's a more attacking option. So again, he has something to decide there, I think, on the left hand side. But things are slowly falling into place, and the good thing for Cerro is they are winning. So the foundation that Chiqui Arce built was, of course, that winning mentality. I mean, they didn't win the league last year, but they got more points than anybody else. They'd won the league the season before. A lot of those players were involved, so they do have that good base to get the results when they're not playing at their best. But yeah, we need some more time. We need some time to see how it molds and gels, and with that strike force that we're talking about, with those attacking players, they need to be scoring 2 goals a game, just like Libertad do, for example. That's where they're really letting themselves down at the moment, because they're not always going to get an opposition as weak as Curicó, who really didn't offer much attacking wise. So that's maybe the test for Cerro, is to make those chances count.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that I think it was weird to see that they let Chorin do the penalty kick, because apparently he had been missing the last couple of penalty kicks, so it was kind of like a weird decision from the coach to let him do that. But yeah, I mean, it could have been a much better game, like you guys were saying. And I think they have to consider the fact that next time, in this next phase, that they're gonna have tougher opponents. So they're gonna have to figure out ways to make it look for them to score more goals, because you can't, yes, defense, helps win, but you got to score to win. So let's see what they have to offer. Hopefully, this next phase of the Libertadores, they can really wake up, and Sava can really figure out what works best for the team.
And I think also as well, I mean, yeah, I think this is always the big question for Cerro fans. And I think, many people always like to know what their team stands. And, ultimately you want to play in the big competitions. I personally am a big advocate about that. I don't know what you guys think, but if Cerro don't win this game in the next series, they'll be dropped down to the Sudamericana, which, the opponents are definitely, of, to say lesser quality than what you see in the Libertadores, but it's also not a certainty that you are going to go far in that tournament as well, Ralph. Just going on that, I mean, yeah, we don't know what could happen to them. I mean, we'll see who they play next week if it's going to be Deportivo Maldonado Fortaleza. But I think that's always the big question: do Cerro indeed risk it all and try to go for this group stage and see what happens from there? Or do they try to do something in the Sudamericana, which, I think for any of these teams, we're talking on the day that Independiente del Valle won the Recopa, the South American Super Cup against Flamengo. They have so many titles already, and they definitely don't have the history in comparison, at least in years, of Cerro Porteño. But that's kind of the example one has to put in. It's like, do you take that risk and try to see what you can do there?
I think, well, I think you'll get a slight indication at the weekend in terms of the team Sava puts together, because he made about 7 changes for the game, for the league game. And then, as Fede was saying, brought back this 11. So he's playing what he thinks is the strongest 11 in the Libertadores. Now he has a tough test because he has the Clásico, and then next week is the game, either against Fortaleza or Maldonado. It's coming up straight away. So you'll get an indication there, but for me, Cerro is Libertadores. It has to be. The money is much better. The money in the group stage is much stronger. And like you're saying, the Sudamericana, there's no guarantees. It's a tough tournament at the moment with the amount of Brazilian teams, with where Brazilian football is. It's almost just as hard in some ways. So I think if you're Cerro, you put everything into the Libertadores. What that means for the weekend, which we'll talk about, is going to be interesting, because it's also going to be Facundo Sava's first Clásico. He doesn't have the advantage that Chiqui Arce would have Chiqui Arce could have played a B team in the Clásico, and you can't accuse him of not taking it seriously, because he's won plenty in the past. But for Sava, it's now like, if he, the foreign manager doesn't play his best team in the Clásico because he's saving them for, let's say, a game against Deportivo Maldonado, that could look bad. So he has a tough decision, I think, in terms of, I'm sure he will make changes from this team, but I don't know if we'll see the 7. I think it was like 7 or 8 changes at the weekend. I don't think we'll see something like that.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be a mix. And Fed, that you can go in as well, because I think that's kind of really the mood there. And we'll talk again, like I said, about the Superclasico in depth later on, but that's kind of the big question for Cerro fans as well. What type of team is needed for this side, and also just how can they tackle that while also potentially playing a game next week, obviously the first leg of the game of the series that could indeed be the turning point of their season.
I don't think they ran that much against Curicó, to be honest. I mean, they didn't really do much in both matches, so I think they're pretty well rested. And I do believe that when Facundo Sava came into Cerro Porteño, he took charge of this team and saw the calendar. He saw that the Superclasico was going to be right in the middle of these 2 series. So if there was a time to rest the team, it was last weekend. And now to have these guys fresh for these 2 upcoming games, probably not against Olimpia, but the game after that in the local league, they might rest again right before playing the second leg. I think that would be the obvious thing to do, right? Put the starting team, the one that's responding very well in Libertadores. We saw that the subs are not that good as the starting team. We saw that in the local league last weekend around, especially that midfield. Obviously, we gotta talk about maybe the team that Cerro Porteño is gonna put against Olimpia, but they're all pretty much rested, Roberto, because they didn't play their heart out. I believe against Curicó, they even took out the players pretty much halfway through that second half. Robert Morales, the stars of this team. Pica Lucena also rested. He took out pretty much the whole midfield out because you have 5 subs now. So it gives you that possibility when you have control of the game, just like Cerro Porteño thought they did against Curicó. And I thought that was important, right? Just looking forward, that you have everybody healthy. Also, you're not having any injuries, which was a problem last year for this same squad. That's also important for Facundo Sabato to just keep everybody healthy and keep everybody rested to demand the best out of these players.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's definitely the mindset and the mood to go into for one side of Badirredo, but the other side of Badirredo in Nacional certainly will not be a happy camp at the moment, because of course we're speaking about a Nacional side that lost yesterday in Lima against Sporting Cristal. Shout out to Renato, by the way, one of our previous guests, big Sporting Cristal fan, who I'm sure is very, very vivid and happy about this result. But what we saw from a Nacional side was complete and utter failure. They were up 3-0 at one point, I think, in this series, only to concede 5 on all in the second half from Sporting Cristal. I mean, Ralph, this is a big collapse. First time Nacional have ever conceded 5 in a Libertadores. For any team to lose by that amount, especially when you've taken the lead, it's a huge blow psychologically. And, I think this Nacional side definitely had the potential of going and hopefully doing something even further, even if they didn't beat whoever they're going to play. It was either going to be Boston River or Huracan. They certainly had some sort of an opportunity to get some money, maybe in the Sudamericana at worst. But yeah, for them to lose this one, where do they go from here? Because yeah, it's certainly, I think the hype, especially towards them after what we saw last season, just diminished away as we saw last night.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's a very different team from last year, as I think we spoke about before. But what Sarabia had done very well was get this new group playing good football and organized football, and they just don't look like a team that will concede 5 goals. I mean, okay, 2 goals came in stoppage time. They don't even look like a team though that would concede 3 goals in the second half. But for it to be, because when it got to 3-1, then suddenly it was going to penalties. I mean, it's really strange to try and put your finger on it. I mean, first give credit to Cristal. Sporting Cristal is a much stronger team than Huancayo, who they played in the first game. The manager of Sporting Cristal won the Sudamericana with Paranaense. I mean, is a top coach that they've got in there. They managed to bring on a couple of players in the second half who started to make a difference, who, from my understanding, again, not an expert on Peruvian football, but from my understanding, they're those kind of players that are very frustrating, that sometimes play well, sometimes don't. And last night they started playing well and doing the job. But it's a real surprise for Nacional. I mean, one thing maybe that comes back to is sometimes it's very important, your history in tournaments, your competitiveness, your just knowing how to manage these games and win these games. And for Nacional, this is now the 19th Copa Libertadores away game that they haven't won. 19 is a lot, especially considering they got to the final. So they just don't seem to have that maybe that game management that they're able to do in these tough games. But it's really disappointing. There's no other way about it. It's really disappointing that you get into that position where you're qualifying still, with 30 minutes left, because I think that's when the 2-1 is. So you just have to see out the game. It's not particularly difficult, and they collapsed. And like you say, it's the first time they've ever conceded 5, the first time they've lost by 4 in the Libertadores. Their previous worst was a 4-1 to Cruz Azul, which is 2012. So again, a long time ago. I think they lost 3-0 back in 1983 or something like that. So it's just really rare to see this happen, but is a big disappointment. They and by going out in this phase, as we're talking about, they don't get Sudamericana. They get nothing. That's it. It's over.
Yeah, it's definitely over for them, and it's sad to see that, because I think certainly they had the potential to do some more, but unfortunately we're unable to do that as well. So we'll definitely have to see how their season pans out as we switch gears to what's been happening in the local league. Yes, the big game happening this weekend, the Superclasico. I want to go to Maria on this one, because certainly the game between these two sides is certainly important. Obviously, Cerro coming in with that win against Corisco Unido over there in midweek. But obviously, a Superclasico is certainly a different way to approach things. And, I think for Olympia's case, it's a good thing that kind of Ralph had mentioned, the fact that this is someone in Olimpia's case, like Julio Cesar Carlos, knows how to play Superclásicos, knows how to win Superclásicos, and of course manage them. So he's done it all. He's obviously has kind of the upper hand on this one. And even if the table says another thing, I still personally think Olimpia are favorites in this one, just because I think Cerro are going to be so focused on that game next week in the Libertadores that just from the way that they've been performing, you would think that, at least in my estimation, I think Olimpia can feel much more confident. Maybe it's the pessimistic Sarista and me thinking that way, but I don't know. It's just, you'd look at how Cerro have kind of really have gone through so much. And yes, Olimpia haven't exactly looked the best either, but I've always just seen Olimpia in the upper hand with Superclásicos, and I don't think that changes this weekend. Honestly, I still see them as a team that is the one to win in Para Uno this weekend.
Yeah, I think historically, lately, it's been Olympia has been the favorite, in the past couple of Superclásicos, and with the results as well, you can tell that they put a lot of emphasis in this game. But honestly, I see Cerro really going for this game. And I'm just saying because I feel like even though they've had a rocky situation the last couple of games, and with their new coach, I feel like Sava has really it's becoming more knowledgeable about this team. It's becoming more it's really like getting to know the team players and really seeing what Cerro really needed, which is getting this whole team together. And even though all the crazy stuff that's been going on in Cerro, I think they really come out of all of this and have shown that despite everything, they can really continue playing and show them results. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a really tight game this weekend. Also, a lot of fans are not really happy with how Olimpia are performing lately. Like we talked about last episode, they are struggling a little bit in their defense side, and with their new signing Romagna, he's not really has been proving or showing too much. He's a little slow in the back. So they are seeing a little bit of hope though, because they're having one of their players is coming back, could be coming back, Alcaraz, Antolin Alcaraz. So maybe that does help a little bit in that section for Olimpia, but it might be a little crazy game this weekend. We'll see, what they can offer. I think it's gonna be very centered in this defensive side, because they work on that and they'll probably do work on that. Olimpia does have a good scoring record, so they've been scoring in a lot of their games lately. They don't have a problem in that section. So we'll see. I think it's gonna be a very it's gonna be a very equal side game. They do have the advantage, like I said earlier, Olimpia, that they'll be playing at home. So that's a really good thing. So we'll see. I hope that it's a good game though, but I don't think that it's gonna be a very much one-sided side for either of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be quite close. What we saw, Julio Cesar Cáceres got the better of Chiquiase in the Clásicos last year. I think Olimpia won all of the league ones, right? If I remember correctly, they drew I think in Libertadores, but that was a different kind of strategy. And he got the better of Chiquiase's tactics. And it was interesting that we didn't get one of those games that's like a very boring, tight, cautious draw because of that, because both teams set themselves up to play the way they wanted to play, and one team basically overran the other one, but it was more like a tactical thing. Here, I wonder if Sava is going to be much more cautious, and then you're going to see maybe a much tighter game. Also, from Julio Cesar Cáceres' point of view, he hasn't worked him out yet, because he's only played 3 or 4 games with Cerro, so I don't think Cáceres is going to say, okay, I know exactly how this team play, because everybody knew how Chiquiase's team played. It became like from memory, like we said. So I think we're going to get a much closer game, and this could be that kind of game that ends with neither team getting the win, which is something we haven't really seen in the league recently. And I was just looking up Sava. He's obviously been a manager in Clásicos. He was at Racing, so he had 2 Clásicos against Independiente, and they both ended in draws. So that's starting to give me a little indication of where my prediction might be going. Interestingly, he played with Oscar Romero in both of those, so I wonder if he's going to get on the phone to Oscar Romero and ask him about the importance of this game, because of course Romero had both Romero twins used to play really well in the Clásicos against Olimpia. They had a very good record. And yeah, just thinking about from the Olimpia side, their big issue has been defense, as I think Maria is pointing to with people like Romagna, and they played with Zarate and Barreto in central defense at the weekend, and they conceded again. I think they've only kept 1 clean sheet this season so far, including the Super Cup. So they're really struggling defensively, and they haven't found that partnership. And he's not convinced by Otálvaro. He finally dropped Otálvaro and brought in Tuco Salazar, but I don't know if Salazar did enough to really earn that place. So he has a problem on the wings as well. That's the right-hand side. Zavala is new on the left-hand side. Let's see how Zavala does against somebody like Beto Espinola, who's that overlapping fullback who's going to be attacking a lot down that side as well. But I think that's Olympia's big problem this season has been defensively. And we're talking kind of the same with Cerro, in the sense that Cerro's problem is they're not scoring enough goals to win games. Olimpia is probably they're conceding too many to win games, and so let's see how that works out. But I am sensing something very tight, a very close game, I think.
Bad defense on both teams could end up in a game with a lot of goals. That's what I'm thinking, guys. Olympia does not have their starting defenders right now. Who are they? I really don't know, because I think they still haven't showed up with their level. I mean, Junior Barreto has been there all games, but alongside him, it was Gamarra for a couple of games until he was sent off. Luis Zarate had the opportunity. He did not make the best of it. He pretty much handed the ball off to that tie against Guaireña, and he was criticized by their fans. And obviously that problem on the right side also. Julio Cáceres' favorite has always been Salazar, not so much Otálvaro. But Otálvaro, I believe, feels better with those players. He has that chemistry with certain players, and he's that attacking player. He does a lot more when he has to attack than Salazar, I believe. So Julio Cáceres needs to make up his mind in the defense, in that midfield, because I was really thrown off. I think Olimpia fans were also very thrown off when he sat down Marcos Gomez. That game, but forcing the captain Richard Ortiz back to the team when he's not 100%, or at least when he's not contributing as much as Marcos Gomez does, it did not look good in that first half, and he had to change it up for the second part of the game. And he also took out Breda, which was one of the big signings at the beginning of the year, bringing in Brian Montenegro. So he's having trouble pretty much in all 3 lines of this team, trying to figure it out right now after 2 games and not being able to win. And when you don't win at home right before playing the Superclasico against Cerro Porteño, fans are going to be on top of this team to try to do something quick in the Superclasico. I believe. I think they're gonna want to see an Olimpia hungry for the victory, and I think Cerro could use that to their advantage. The pressure that Olimpia could feel for the first time in a long time, pressure that they did not have last year, because they pretty much cruised through the Superclásico. Like Ralph was saying, they got pretty much the best results all year long. So I'm thinking that Cerro Porteño, if they're smart about it, this could be a game with a lot of goals.
Ralph said it. Olympia has not had it easy keeping a clean sheet, and you don't know what you're gonna get from Cerro in that defense line either, because you have Brock being able to play the league games, but he can't play the Libertadores. He might get the starting role against Porteño, but then you have Gabriel Weiser doing really well as a center back, I believe. I mean, the 2 games that he played against Curicó Unido, he fit pretty well in that spot. So I wouldn't move that team that much. That team, it worked out against Curicó. Maybe try it out against Olimpia, see if you can build some momentum out of that and get the Superclásico. Both teams need to win, Roberto. That's the reality of Olimpia, of Cerro Porteño. Libertad has taken off, and until they play against Libertad's just going to keep on winning, because they have really good players, and they're finding a way to win game by game.
Absolutely. I think failure for both these sides to not win this game, I think, gives better news to Libertad, especially, of course, if they do beat Trinidense as well after that game. So, I mean, everyone's kind of easing into a prediction. Do I smell it? Yes, I do. Fede, I mean, you kind of mentioned it there. How do you see the Superclásico faring out?
I'm gonna say that this is gonna be one of those super clásicos with many goals, just like I was saying. I don't know which one was the last one that had like 4 or 5 goals, but I'm gonna go with maybe like a 3-2 for Cerro Porteño or 2-1 for Cerro Porteño. Yeah, I think that we're gonna see a lot of goals this time around. That's what I want. I want to show Roberto. I want a really good game. I want this super classic to go around the world. If it's a 0-0 match, this is gonna be really boring, and I hope the fans get the tickets worth also. So I want to see goals. I want to see a big super classical showdown.
I love the energy and I love the enthusiasm, Ralph. I mean, you know, both these managers know how to play clásicos. Some have experience with draws. We've kind of that recurring theme so far, but will that be the same this weekend?
It's where I'm heading as I think about. I mean, I agree with the goals, by the way. I think both teams will score. I don't think we'll see a 0-0. It's hard. They're not good enough either side. But I get the feeling they could cancel themselves out a bit, and neither team is in that moment where they're really feeling clicking into gear and they can feel they'll take the win. So I'm going to go for a draw, and it'll probably be a 1-1 or maybe 2-2, and we get lots of goals.
Maria, it's been a while since Olimpia have lost at Para Uno against Cerro Porteño. Do you feel a shock going underway, or do you feel that maybe Olimpia have enough to continue that streak under Julio Cesar Cáceres?
Well, you know, a loss doesn't mean a win. So I think probably I'm feeling also a draw, and with lots of goals as well. So I think I'm going to go with Ralph with this one, probably a 2-2. So.
Yeah, I see that too. I think it's going to be a feisty win. I don't think this game ends 11-11. I think someone's going to get sent off. Superclásicos always have some sort of dramatic issue going on, or like someone getting sent off or some fight. So I see that. I do agree. I do think we'll definitely see goals galore. But I'm not going to be that confident in Fede's case of edging towards a team. I think both sides have really had issues defensively, and I think I still see that. But I think it still is favored towards, for me, a draw. I'm going to say a 2-2 on this one. I think we'll see a very tight game early on. Then the goals will start to come, but somehow I think it'll end up in a draw on this one. I really do think that might be the case on that. So definitely going to be a good game, and hopefully a very entertaining one as well. As let's switch gears to finally, unfortunately on a sad note, with a silver lining actually. Obviously talking about the EFL Cup final, the game between Newcastle United of Miguel Almiron taking on Manchester United. We had spoken about that last week. Unfortunately, Newcastle were unable to get any sort of trophy, losing on the day at Wembley 2-0 thanks to goals from Marcus Rashford and Casemiro. I mean, Ralph, I want to go to you on this one because, you know, obviously the silver lining that I'm mentioning is obviously the news that Miguel Almiron had signed a new contract days before this final, all the way up to 2026 until the World Cup there. So that is very much exciting news, and it shows a bit of confidence given to Newcastle, to Miguel, to this new project, and to tie him up like that. I mean, Performance Society didn't see the best Miguel, certainly didn't see the best from any Newcastle player, even from Karius, who I think for me, despite conceding the 2 goals, kind of was the best player on that Newcastle side. But excluding all that, I think the news of this new contract is well deserved, especially given the season that he's had, and it shows that, hey, we're probably seeing a Paraguayan play for numerous more years in England.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, it's a very good from his representative and his Asian writer. Now he's in form. It was the time to sign and get a better deal and get a longer deal. I mean, the only caveat is you have to remember Newcastle now is like Manchester City was about 10 years ago, I guess. I can't remember when. But what you saw, they kept a base of players, but very quickly they could get turnover because they could sign whoever they want. Newcastle hasn't really gone into that turbo mode in signing players for crazy money yet, but it could happen at some point. And so that might mean that Miggy finds he's playing behind somebody that's just world class. I mean, like I say, they haven't done that yet, Newcastle, but there's always that possibility. But I think what we've seen is, by establishing this contract, he's got a great chance of staying in England. I think he's well respected in the Premier League, especially after this season. So we'll hopefully see him there. And like you mentioned, it's really important up to the World Cup. So that's what we really want, because we need the very best of him to have a chance at going to the World Cup. And about the game, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think Newcastle didn't play badly, but they just didn't take their chances, whereas Manchester United did, right? It was kind of a game that if maybe one of those chances had gone in for Newcastle early, then it could have been a different story. But they created something. They definitely had the best fans down there. They won that battle, which I know a lot of Man United fans would like to hear, but it was brilliant, wasn't it? The atmosphere they had. So it's good for Miguel. And he's not the only Paraguayan player with a chance of silverware, because last night Brighton won in the FA Cup. Julio Enciso played the last 15 minutes, so you never know. Brighton could get us to an FA Cup final, and Julio Enciso has a chance. So we're still holding on to that.
Yeah, I saw a Newcastle that didn't really take their chances as good as it should have. I mean, going against a Man United for a final game like this is very stressful and is very competitive, and it's gonna be very tough on this team. But I also didn't see much of Almiron, and like you said, guys, he didn't have a great game like we've been used to seeing him, and I thought that was a little disappointing, because I really thought that he could have done it. He could have made this team win, and obviously it doesn't fall on him. He's got great teammates, but he's been kind of the star of the team lately, and I thought that he understood that role that he has in this team and this kind of competition. But I guess things happen for a reason. I guess they can continue to focus on the Premier League, which it should be one of their main goals anyways. So good for Almiron to continue working in this team, and I think that he's, like I said many times before, he loves it there. People love him there as well. Would have liked to see more of him in this game, but it is what it is. It's a learning experience as well. So obviously he's not going anywhere right now, so I think he's set right now, and he's looking good. So good for him.
I think it's great for the player, right? Just to know his future, just to know that he can be calm about it, that he can focus on the football, on his family, just like he's done these last couple of seasons. I think that's been good for him also, right? To get to this level in Newcastle, to this stage. But they're clearly not there yet, guys. They're not ready for these big stage. They're not ready for these big games, I believe, yet. They had trouble against the big teams. Almiron had good games, but they didn't get the results against the big teams in the Premier League. Let's remind that. So it was unfortunate to see that in this final against Manchester United, that you didn't have a close game, that you didn't have a big play from Miguel Almiron, at least, right? A couple of highlights. But I do think it's a good season, no matter how it ends. Still, But it would be great, just like Maria's saying, for them to get into to Champions League, just because that's gonna pretty much force the owners to put in more money in this roster, right? To bring in more good players, and I think that would just bring their level up even more for next year. I do think that's going to be very important just to see where Newcastle heads now, just to see what kind of players they bring in. We know Miggy's going to be part of it. He's part of the project. He earned that spot. That's why they're re-signing him. And I think he's earned that after bringing him from MLS after Newcastle spent so much money on him. I think, they feel like he's earned it, and that's why they're re-signing him for a long deal. But they still got 5 really hard games ahead of them. I was looking at the calendar, and they've fallen behind. Tottenham has run hot lately, and they need to catch up, and they play against big teams, Roberto. So we'll see how this season ends up for them and for Miguel Almiron. Miguel Almiron has to get out of his closet, the Albirroja also, because as of now, it's official. We're playing Chile in Santiago March 27th. So we'll see Miguel Almiron hopefully back with the Albirroja shirt, and maybe we'll see Julian Cesar, as Ralph was saying. We'll see if he's considered also. Robert Morales is back, so hopefully we'll see that young attacking team that we saw just in one game with the Albirroja before they got injured.
100%. I think that's always a big thing. Yes, Newcastle are still in a race to qualify for the Champions League. It's not, of course, certain because, the Premier League always has a lot of surprises, be it who's going for the title, for the top 4 places, for European spots, or even relegation. So hopefully that we can see definitely Miguel Almiron in Europe next season, a European competition, I should say, with this Newcastle United side. It's a great way to close another great episode. And hope everyone enjoys the Superclasico. If they do indeed watch it, it should be a really good game. And thanks for everyone listening. So for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hannah, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.